On this side of the world where we are in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, today is Earth Day. What does that mean to you? Every day should be Earth Day, right? We have no option. Do we have anywhere else to go? But today is Earth Day, and however way you wish to commemorate that, first of all, be very grateful that we do have a planet to live on. Maybe not for long, but when I say not for long, how long would that be? A couple of years. Ha! Anyway, I shouldn't say billions. A couple of billion years. I don't know. At the rate human beings are destroying the surface of the Earth is going to take her revenge one day. She will. That's not esoteric thinking, please. Look around you. Understand what is going on. All right. So we're going to keep on going. Oh, I should actually say that this week is also Fashion Revolution Week, because in 2013, on April 24th, was the Rana Plaza collapse. Not just collapse, absolute disaster. The Rana Plaza disaster, and that set in motion asking people who manufacture our clothing, who made my clothes? And on yesterday's Stylander, please do have a look, I talk about 5 of my favorite vintage pieces, but I don't just show you what these garments are. I also talk about their history a little and what clothing means to me. And it's all part of the circular economy. It's all about treasuring the workmanship human beings do for each other. I value anything that another human being has done. So I'm wearing vintage earrings and a vintage shirt. And these are priceless things. Maybe they were just $2 in an op shop, but they're still priceless to me because someone made them. Very soon there won't be someone making them at all because, well, it's going to be cheaper to get AI machines to create our clothing. It's getting worse and worse in the conditions for everyone else. And of course, now that China doesn't want to be the world's factory anymore, I talk about that on yesterday's Stylander. Please do check it out. Let's continue with the news. As usual, I start off in Australia to see what's making headlines in Australia. I start off with ABC. So, I'm going to read the headlines, and this is what I do. I curate headlines, or I just read. I have them all open here, and I read what the headlines are as they're happening. New South Wales facing a COVID-like budget shock due to 11.9 billion GST hole. So it's a budget shortfall. But we do have the budget to buy nuclear submarines. I'm continuing with headlines. Hundreds light candles for victims of Bondi stabbing attack as injured baby discharged from hospital. And next to that headline, there is a feature that says, a man murdered 7 people at a Sydney shopping centre in the 90s. 3 decades on, the trauma remains. And this happened in 1991 at Strathfield Plaza. I'll put that, so it says here, on the afternoon of Saturday, August 17th, 1991, a 33-year-old man murdered 7 people and injured 6 others at Strathfield Plaza using a knife and semi-automatic rifle before taking his own life. Whew. Anyway, so it's not a new thing to Sydney, but it's a rare thing, a rare occurrence. But depends on where you are. For there are people within Australia that know that they're genocide, that murders happen to them every day. I think it depends on your skin shade and your racial grouping, how often something like this is a shock or a regular, or if it's a regular occurrence. I'm going to continue reading news headlines. As the sun set on Bondi Beach, the community vowed to move on from the horror as one. Against the backdrop of golden hour Bondi Beach, a solemn crowd gathered to pay respects to the 6 people killed in the Westfield stabbing attack and make sense of the senseless together. There is a line in a favorite movie of ours, and we talk about that in Finalysis, and the second part of that, because it's a trilogy, and we talk about that in the trilogy. And I know this may seem like a crazy or a superficial segue into like I'm talking about news and I go into entertainment. Movies are a fictionalized depiction of reality. They are the enhanced people, etc. So superhero movies. But in this particular movie, a main character says that some men just want to see the world burn. And these are the men in charge of the world. These are the males in charge of the world. But in the movie, this character was talking about a villain. Why do they want to do this? Making sense of the senseless. Some people just want to see the world burn. In our reality, in our day-to-day life on Earth, as we celebrate Earth Day, the people who want to see the world burn are the people in charge, are the people who have been given the responsibility of guiding the rest of the world's people. I'm going to continue reading news. Headlines. The 38-year-old man suspected of being behind large shipments of meth bound for Australia. A Four Corners investigation has named a 38-year-old Sydney man suspected of being one of the major importers of methamphetamines into Australia. This to me speaks of something larger. More and more people need oblivion and need escapism, and that's why the drug issue, the drug problem, because it is a problem, is getting worse. And I say that being someone who is also an advocate of the usage of what has been deemed drugs for medicinal reasons. There are many, many, many articles, many sites devoted by medical professionals. And of course, now we know that cannabis is a medical marvel. It has always been a medical marvel. It has just been deemed illegal because the wrong people take it, and the wrong in the wrong ways. And now it's deemed medical, and it's beneficial to everybody. And I agree. I absolutely agree. I would have put my mother on it, even though when she had her cancers, etc., she wasn't in pain, but trauma pain and chronic pain, etc. And I do believe that elsewhere in the world we have Pakistan, and I do have this saved somewhere, so give me a moment. Pakistan is considering, so Pakistan sets up first of a cannabis regulatory body to export the herb and boost its struggling economy. Pakistan may soon supply the goods for, and this is, I'm reading from the Juggernaut on Instagram, from your 420 celebrations. I have some that people don't understand why 420 is the code name for cannabis smoking. I think it's silly to do that. It's just an Americanization. Apparently university students, just decided to meet at 420 to smoke weed. And then it's now become a popular global way to describe it. I do believe most people don't know why it's actually called that. Well, the country's president approved plans in late February to create the Cannabis Control and Regulatory Authority, which will oversee policies such as licensing sellers and growers, identifying areas for cultivation, implementing quality controls, and preventing abuse. I absolutely agree. And with that preventing abuse, there has to be psychological tests in place, not just about psychosis, but if a person is responsible enough mentally to take this. And I think that these psychological tests should be done for people who want to have children, for people who want to drink alcohol, for people who want to drive. No, licensing and age is not enough because people are immature at 30 and should not be drinking alcohol. I also think Fiji should look into cannabis tourism and cultural tourism as well, but cannabis as well, as because we know that hospitality itself is not good enough. Unfortunately, hospitality dilutes the kind of people you want. And people say, well, won't cannabis do the same? No. I think that people who are willing to travel to other countries to explore the cultural tourism and also just have a break from the aggression of reality, perhaps going to a paradise, which is a paradox, Fiji. But Fiji is a paradise. And if it had people could unwind, because I don't believe if cannabis is used for medical reasons, therefore it is universally recognized by government and legalese that cannabis actually helps soothe a troubled mind. I am an advocate for it. I do think it's not for everyone, because those people who have a mind that cannot be soothed by expansion of that mind, well, they may need some other help. And I don't know if medicine is always the way for it. Again, I'm not a medical professional and I am pro-medicine, but I do think medicine has to be taken with absolute understanding of what it does to us individually. Thailand had made cannabis legal and they were cannabis malls, etc. But I have read in recent times that towards the end of the year, they are going to put an end to all of that, which I think is foolish. They should have given it a longer time and come down harder on regulating the people. So I think if tourists want to go to another country to have that, they have got to pass some strict tests, like, are you able to do, no, maybe, I don't know, but perhaps yes. Again, I'm not one of those, you do the work, the logistics work. Let's go back to the news headlines. I'm going to move on from reading the headlines and just reading something here that from ABC still. America, the state of America is a step closer to banning TikTok. But will it work? And this is by Ilham Isaac and Sean Wales. In short, the US House has again passed a bill that would force Chinese owners of TikTok to sell or face a ban. 170 million Americans use the short-form video social media platform. Oof. What's next? The bill will now go to the Senate, where it is expected to pass. The US House. Chinese. I think that's the problem, huh? Not think, we know. A potential ban on social media app TikTok in the United States has progressed through to Congress. The legislation has again passed the House of Representatives with the support of both Republicans and Democrats. If it passes and is signed by President Joe Biden, which he has said he would do, it would force TikTok's Chinese owners ByteDance to sell the app within 12 months or face a ban. A previous version of the bill, giving the company just 6 months to sell, passed the House last month but didn't get through the Senate. Half of America's population is on TikTok, and politicians are concerned the Chinese-owned platform poses national security risks if China compels the company to share data. TikTok insists it has never shared US data and never would. The bill is among 4 pieces of legislation tied up in foreign aid packages, which includes funds for Ukraine, Israel, and US allies in the Indo-Pacific. What actually is happening here is that the state of America is worried about what information people are able to share on social media platforms. Those of us who use our social media platforms to share knowledge and expansion of awareness of what's happening in the world, to share information and to share news. And I do need to also say that there's a lot of people using all of this as draw cards for themselves or avoidance reasons, but we'll talk about that elsewhere. This is about news headlines. I do think that a lot of these crackdowns, of course, are directly related to the shadow banning and suspension that most of us get forced upon us. And our numbers, I have done experiments where I will post on Instagram photographs of myself, of my husband and me, of flowers, of birds, etc., and or any photographs of me, and my numbers on stories goes back up into 3 figures. I used to be closer to 1,000. But when I post about the atrocities and the crises the world is currently undergoing, my numbers go down to about 28. And I will be talking more about numbers in the views section of the Daily Egg, but numbers go right down till about 28, or less, but if I put photographs of myself, they shoot right back up into 3 figures. So the bots are mining, and it's very clever, because many people were using I don't know the term for that anymore, but we're disguising words like genocide. It's all very childish that we have to do. It's not childish, it's just what is this? I'm an adult, I'm in my 50s. If I want to write genocide, I will write the word genocide. We got penalized in school or punished for not writing words correctly, and now we've got to write in code in potato juice. Potato ink, invisible ink, So this is about just stopping the spread of information. During the pandemic, or if you're talking about, I had said the first news headline was that that New South Wales is facing a shock budget deficit of some billions of dollars. But as I said, we've got money to buy nuclear submarines, Australia. Going back to what's happening, it's about us not seeing what is actually happening in the world. And most importantly, it's about the people in the countries that these atrocities are happening in and to. Those people are now using social media to share what is actually happening on the ground, something that governments don't want any of us to see. I am puzzled by the continuation of the state of America's citizens to insist that what is happening in the Middle East is not genocide. Surely anything that is murdering hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people is genocide, whether it is happening on a Western country soil, in a Western country soil, I do have to sort of just stop for a moment or two to catch my breath. If you want your news impartial, please go to the talking heads where they are. Very soon they will also be AI, not just this name that was coined for newsreaders back in the 80s and 90s, talking heads, because newsreaders had to stay impartial and therefore unemotional. I'm not going to do that. Emotions are what dictates the world. Public relations and emotions. I'm going to move on. Speaking of Biden, this is a news story from a few days ago, from Friday, 19th of April, and this is from The Guardian. Biden, lost for words. Joe Biden's tale about cannibals bemuses Papua New Guinea residents. Joe Biden's suggestion that his uncle may have been eaten by cannibals in Papua New Guinea during World War II has been met with a mixture of bemusement and criticism in the country. By the way, bemusement does not mean what the majority of people think it means. It doesn't mean being amused. People tend to conflate bemuse and amuse, where bemusement means puzzled, actually. Biden spoke about his uncle while campaigning in Pittsburgh on Wednesday, describing how Uncle Bosie, Lieutenant Ambrose Finnegan Jr., Uncle Bosie, had flown. I don't know about you, but I do not want the leader of the supposed free world referring to Uncle Bosie. What is that? He's holding an ice cream cone and in one hand and one day and referring to Uncle Bosie the next. Surely the state of America, surely you can see, people, citizens of the state of America, surely you can see that you are being run you're being run into the ground. You are witnessing and contributing to your own demise. It's a shame, because the state of America, the United States of America, what a great country you could have been. So much you have given to the Euro construct world, and so much pop culture that the rest of us have embraced and think of fondly. I love the Eurostream, majority of what has come out from the state of America, but holy cow, the state of America has done itself a great disservice by believing its own hype and believing its own lies. And public relations, and Hollywood has been its greatest publicist. But we're going to continue reading about Uncle Bosie. So Uncle Bosie had flown single-engine planes as reconnaissance flights during the war. Biden said he got shot down in New Guinea, adding that they never found the body because there used to be a lot of cannibals, for real, in that part of New Guinea. Official war records say Finnegan was killed on a plane on which he was a passenger, experienced engine failure, and crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Excuse me, I do need to clear my throat. The records do not mention cannibalism or state that the plane was shot down. Analysts in PNG who were shown his comments described the claims as unsubstantiated and poorly judged, pointing out that they come at a time when US has been seeking to strengthen its ties with the country and counter Chinese influence in the Pacific region. Someone get that old male out of the White House. Again, I should say that it is not the people who are ruling. You should look at who is around the people who are in positions of ruling and leadership. I have mentioned this many times before, Trump could be such an asset to the world, to the state of America, if the right people are around him. He is a puppet. Who is advising him? They're egging him on. They want him to be this much of a loose cannon and unfiltered. He's not afraid to tell the truth. He thinks he's got everyone on his side. He does. The real power mongers. He does. I'm going to move on to the Sydney Morning Herald. Or actually, we've had enough of Euro news in Australia. Let's see what's happening on NITV. The PM says there will be a coronial inquiry into a 10-year-old's passing whilst in state care. Passing. The 10-year-old committed suicide while in state care. A 10-year-old committed suicide. A 10-year-old First Nations child in state care committed suicide. A family representative said the first time the boy's parents had been permitted to see him since he was removed from their care was at a morgue. I am not discounting that they are huge issues, but the way to deal with these issues is not to separate children from where they need to be, and that is surrounded by their community. This article discusses distressing themes, including self-harm. We are here to talk about all of this. Everything needs to be addressed before anything can change. We'll be talking more about this in the views section of the Daily Egg. The boy, who cannot be named for legal reasons, died last Friday night in Perth while under the care of Department of Communities. Indigenous Affairs Minister Linda Burney said, "My heart goes out to the family and community in WA that has lost a son so young." She wrote this on X. The Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles, which I didn't even know his name, said it was impossible not to, because Australian politics, we change, people like we change people in government. The Deputy Prime Minister said it was impossible not to be moved by his death, and it was a tragic circumstance. It is a tragedy what is happening still to this day in this 235-year-old country, Australia, which I love. I love this country, primarily because it was constructed on sacred ancient land. There would have been other ways to integrate, but no, people choose to colonize by conquest instead of integrating by coming in peace. So the Deputy Prime Minister said it certainly does speak to the fact that we have enormous challenges going forward in relation to closing the gap. The gap is referred to the gap between the First Nations people and the construction that is Australia. That's what it's called, closing the gap, because apparently reconciliation is what is going to make everything better. It should have, because there are more people than not who actually want people to live in peace. However, the referendum that we were subjected to in 2023 on October 14th, we had to vote for the right of our First Nations people to actually have a voice in the Constitution. And that's all it was, just to add the First Nations people into the Constitution of Australia. All that was a vote just for that. And they were met with a resounding no. And most First Nations people were, there were people who were for it and people who were against it. And they were the only people to have that right to say that. No one else had a right to say anything, and no one else had a right to vote. But it was put to the people, and the guilt and the onus was put on people, and it was met with a resounding no. And even those who were against it, the people of First Nations background, even those who were against it, perhaps could have done with a nice pouring of hope. But nope, they were right. The people of Australia, including the brown and black people and people of, all sorts of migrant backgrounds, were clearly too scared about their own stability in this country to vote for the First Nations people. What a shame. Lydia Thorpe is calling for urgent government action. Senator Lydia Thorpe has called for the government to urgently implement the recommendations of the 1997 Bringing Them Home report. Thorpe says the report was delivered in 1997, but to date the majority of its recommendations have not been implemented. Our babies are not safe in these systems of child stealing. They never have been. It's not protection, it's a national shame. How can we be comfortable with this? Children are dying every day, First Nations children. Today kids learn about the stolen generation in school, says the senator, but what they're not taught is that these policies never ended. I'm going to move on to SBS News. H5N1 bird flu has now spread to every continent except Australia. How can we prepare? Now, this is something that is not in a lot of news because we're focused on what's happening crisis and conflict-wise, particularly in the Middle East, but there are crises happening all over Sudan and something happening in India, which we'll get to in the news. And let's just talk a little bit, let's just read a little bit about what is happening with this bird flu. And this is from SBS News in Australia still. The H5N1 bird flu strain is in flight. It's infected more and more animal species, has now passed from a cow to a human, and has been detected in raw cow's milk. It's also reached new territories for the very first time, including South America and Antarctica. Antarctica. It's reached Antarctica. Oh my goodness. Associate Professor Kirsty Short, a virologist at the University of Queensland, said H5N1 is a particularly worrying strain. We're concerned at the rapidity at which H5N1 has spread, and the fact that it spread to places where previously avian flu was not present. It's a major ecological problem. Oh my gosh. So let's just, so it's gone bird to cow, and cow to bird transmission. So let's see, it's not in Australia yet, which is incredible, given it's carried in wild migrating birds. But it is going to cause huge problems. We've already had the bird flu in Asia a few years ago, and that is also a SARS virus, I believe. And of course, COVID took over, coronavirus took over as being the most, scary one because of the way it affected humans. Well, I do understand why people don't want to be listening to the news when I read and curate the news headlines from around the world, because it is all doom and gloom. I'm seeing that a lot of people are unfollowing my account on Instagram because I share the doom and gloom, because people are more into oblivion and escapism. They think that, well, their lives are doom and gloom, so why should they then be, when they're watching something, why should they watch it for actually finding out more about the doom and gloom? They want escapism and entertainment. That is all what people want now. Okay? Well, this is something which is, I think I'm going to talk about, the people and their parasocial relationships with celebrities. Lara fantasized for years about meeting her celebrity crush. When she finally did, her world collapsed. She won something to win. She won a competition to meet a pop star, and then her world is crushed because the pop star wasn't in love with her the way she was in love with him. Crazy world. I'm going to read Fiji Village to see what's happening here. Whew. 42 villages identified due to relocate due to climate change. And this is a reality of Pacific Island countries. They are sinking. Of course, Pacific Island countries were created from volcanic activity, like the entire Earth was. But the newly formed countries are sinking. And why are they sinking? Well, this is directly related to our usage, to our daily modern living and the use of fossil fuels. Climate change is a natural process of this planet, however, not as rapidly and as we are experiencing it now, and it has been expedited by our industrial actions and our need for what? Profits. Because there is an article somewhere here that I read. Why are people so angry? On ABC, I'm moving back to ABC now from Fiji Village, I'll go back. There's an article here that says, why are we all so angry right now? Many experts say we're being manipulated for profit, something I have been talking about for quite some time now. We need to enter a no-profit era, or the world will never find balance. We will never fix anything. It is the very few people, the 1% of the world that is controlling what is happening. We are angry, not just because of the cost of living, because we know something deep down that we have all been manipulated, but we're all too embarrassed to admit it out loud, because we're all just rather be traumatized, because there seems to be some sort of nobility in being traumatized by what is happening to the world. And so then you become an advocate or an activist, avoiding the truth and the realities that fix yourself first. The other reason people don't want to watch the daily news is because of the anger that seems to come out from me, but I'm not able to stop it. Why aren't you angry? Fear and anger are dominating our world right now. It's because of profit. This article I will put in the captions, this link But I'm going to go back to Fiji Village to talk about 42 villages identified to relocate due to climate change. The Fiji Human Rights and Anti-Discrimination Commission says if all 16 Pacific Island countries had a human rights commission, it would have made them a stronger collective voice on issues which affect them, such as climate change. This is a really, really long lead into this article. My apologies. The chair says Fijians who live in coastal areas are affected by the rise in seawater that impacts their fishing habitat and farms and forces them to relocate. This is a very urgent matter. This relocation, we're talking now. It's happening now. This is a heavier article that I will also put in the section, but I'm going to now go to Radio New Zealand and their Pacific section. What's happening in the Pacific? More than half of Solomon Islands election results in as counting continues. So again, with all of these countries, everyone is just on eggshells because every political, riots are caused for political reasons and for government reasons and for cost of living reasons. People would rather live in harmony, but so many people, no, not so many, everyone is traumatized and angry. I'm going to continue with news headlines quickly from the Indian Express. Congress government used to say Muslims have first right to wealth. They will distribute wealth to those with more children, and this is from Modi, the Prime Minister. Reacting to the comments, Pawan Khera, the Congress's media department head, accused the Prime Minister of lying again. What is happening in India? India is a secular country. Sorry, India is a secular country, and secular means anything not related to religion. So, a country is not secular, but a temple, a Hindu temple is. It's a Hindu temple, so it's secular. So anything pertaining to religion is. But countries should not be secular. But India is slowly getting to that. And the political dominance of this is an article I'm reading from 2019, the fate of secularism in India. The political dominance of the BJP's brand of Hindu nationalism since the 2014 election has called into question the future viability of the country's secularist tradition and commitment to diversity. And what it really is animosity between Hindus and Muslims. Not all. I'm generalizing because, of course, this is not what Hinduism says. And, of course, this is not what Islam says, regardless of how many people will quote that says the Quran says this, because the Quran, Islam is a monotheist religion, and Hinduism is a polytheist religion where I say we because I was brought up Hindu, but I'm not a practicing Hindu, but I do subscribe to the scientific philosophy of Hinduism. So Hinduism is polytheistic, where we do, we do externalize emotions and energies onto different manifestations and representations of godliness. And Islam requires just one. So that seems to be a huge issue between parties. That the Hindus that speak for all of Hindu India, it's not Hinduism, that's called Hindutva. I will leave that to you to find out more about that. I'm going to read more articles. Ooh, and this is from January 2024, and this is an opinion from Nikkei Asia. India is still an officially secular nation, but maybe not for long, and that was in January 2024. And the author is a research fellow at the Cato Institute, a Washington-based think tank. Secular India appears on its way to becoming a Hindu state. Last Monday, and this was in January, India witnessed the spectacle of millions watching on television as Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated a temple to the Hindu god Ram, built upon the ruins of a historic 16th century mosque, demolished by a mob in 1992 in the northern city of Ayodhya. Erasing the distinction between church and state, Modi called it a divine moment that marked Ram's rule again and the end of a slavery mindset. With the building of the temple, he said that 1,000 years of slavery was finished. Ooh. Modi's party, BJP, has always taken the position that India is a Hindu nation that was enslaved by Muslims in the 11th century and then later by British conquerors. It has portrayed secular opposition parties, namely the Congress party that ruled India for decades, as having a colonial mindset of looking down on Hindus and being preoccupied with seeking the votes of Muslims and Christians, who together constitute about 17% of the country's population. Yet, secularism is still enshrined in the Constitution of India. Until recently, only a fringe section of the BJP publicly demanded a shift to official Hinduism, but the notion now seems to be moving center stage. The world is segregating. The world is getting more and more divided, and it is left to the world's citizens to protest against this segregation in a time where we need to be uniting, in a time we need to be recognizing that we are just one species with variations. We're segregating more and more, and it is the leaders, it is the people are the leaders, that the people in positions of authority and responsibility and guidance are the ones who are saying, nope, we need to be segregated. I agree there needs to be an absolute overhaul, about in the way the world is governed, but this is not the way to do it. This is now, we are all just heading to war, and I do believe we have not moved from World War II. This is a continuation, the 100-year war. We're in it. We're still in it. We're in the Middle Ages. We're in the Middle Ages. I'm going to Reuters. Why I say we're in the Middle Ages, reading from Reuters, some young people see Trump as an answer to their economic woes. And this is accompanied by a photograph. This is from Reuters. Accompanied by a photograph of young parents who themselves look about 17 years old with a baby in tow. And they're complaining about, the economy. And it's like they're having children while they themselves are children, and they think Trump is the answer to the economic woes. Okay. Russia says US facing humiliation in Ukraine like in Vietnam. Baby in Gaza saved from womb of mother killed in Israeli strike. Israeli forces shoot 3 Palestinian assailants in West Bank. Maldives pro-China ruling party tipped to win election. North Kosovo Serbs boycott referendum on removing ethnic Albanian mayors. China hosts foreign naval officials amid South China Sea tensions. South Korea protests Japanese leaders' offerings to Yasukuni Shrine. South Africa faces upside risk to inflation and financial conditions. UN in Libya urges probe into death of detained activist. Man dies after setting self on fire outside New York court where Trump trial underway. From the Associated Press, Israeli leaders criticize expected US sanctions against military unit that could further strain ties. Earth Day. How one grocery shopper takes steps to avoid pointless plastic. So while they keep the world's people busy, worried about how our individual usage, which we should be, but we get blamed, right? Our activities, our individual activities has contributed to the world's pollution and what's happening and all the crap that's happening in the world. Wonderful reverse psychology here. Blame us for being the consumers. Don't blame the people who force these things upon us. With that, I'm not going to read the rest of the news articles. I'm just going to briefly see what is happening. Oh, gosh. child killed. I'm reading some posts I've saved on Instagram. Child killed or injured every 10 minutes in Israel's war on Gaza. Again, as I say, the focus is very much there, but please do not forget to read about what is happening in Sudan. Please keep yourself up to date what is happening in Congo. Please keep yourself up to date what is happening in the world, because even in the Euro construct societies like Australia, as I had read out to you, a 10-year-old committed suicide whilst in state care. How can we be okay with this? I'm going to move on into now just, look, I've got to move on. I've got to now go into the views section of the Daily Egg. And we're going to head into Studio K. And as I said, we're going to find a better way to transition and from the news to views. But until now, take a closer look at, and I should actually play music in my mind or by my mouth. La 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 la. La la la. Hello, darling. We are in Studio K now. Welcome, welcome. My goodness. So what are we talking about? The news headlines. I get why people don't want to watch the news, or especially the way I share news, because it is rather depressing. And for those people who are already depressed, that would be about 8 billion people. Yeah. I get it. You want escapism, right? Okay, great. We've got some shows there that can entertain and educate at the same time. I know it's longer than the 60 seconds that people expect and demand of their education and wisdom and entertainment, 60 seconds of it. But I'm hoping that people are wanting to expand their attention spans a bit more and looking for a little bit more than escapism and oblivion. And that's where I want to talk about something. Numbers. I had said something about numbers and how individual people get punished and blamed and criticized and critiqued, and also are expected to shoulder the responsibility of our usage, commercial usage, our day-to-day usage. So we get blamed for our plastic use, etc., instead of actually talking to the people who force this on us.
Yes.
But we get blamed, and this is the whole numbers thing, because, okay, here, right, on our channel, it's, we're seeing the numbers, we see the numbers, everyone can see the numbers, everyone can see that, well, maybe there's only 4 people watching any of our shows. Some shows have over 200, that was our first episode of The Riff, and Stylander, fashion-based, well, that's got over 100. We have throughout time, our last year rugby show episodes got over 1,000. So everyone can see numbers now, and because of the way human beings are, being one species, we are very much a species of common unity, and what unites people right now are numbers, and that's manipulation. So when people see, that a lot of people are seeing something or lining up for something or blah 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 wanting something, then people go, oh, that's where I want to be. Because I don't want to say that people are sheep. It's just that there is a herd mentality.
It's human nature.
People rely on other people's discernment. Yeah. People think that other people know what is right. And so therefore they think, well, if a lot of people are watching something, that's what's right. And if people aren't watching something, well, why should they?
That's how religion works, right?
That I guess so. Mm-hmm. Not guess, yes. Yes.
It's all about the numbers.
It's all about the numbers. So while we are now seeking people to come on board with us as advertisers, as patrons, as sponsors, so that we can continue to do what we do and to create a channel of transparency and truth and accountability and education and entertainment. And between Dwayne and me, we have so much that we are intrigued and intrigued by and interested in. Our scope of knowledge is never ending because our thirst for knowledge is never ending. And we both think, well, we just don't know anything because there's never, you can't put a periphery or a full stop on knowledge. Every day is a new day to seek something, new, to gain something new.
Even science.
Even in science. Science is the search for the fact every day.
Even when they find the fact, they try to disprove it just to make sure that they've got it right.
Yes, excuse me, I do need to clear my throat again. So this is what I'm talking about now. And I also have to talk about this where people just assume that because we do not have the numbers, we are seeking subscribers. So please don't forget to subscribe if you are watching and have watched this far. Why shouldn't you subscribe? I don't quite get why people. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, but it is so precious and priceless and valuable to us. And I think that is what is behind a lot of the reasons why people don't support other people, because why should they? You know, they're getting nothing out of this. So people support something that they get something out of. And if they then get faced with something that they don't want to face themselves, like all the things I say, then, you know, they don't want to support. That sounds a bit, does it sound churlish of me? I hope I don't sound like I'm going, why don't people support us? Blah, blah, blah. I am curious, though. Yeah. I'm curious about why, if I have, say, 3,000 account followers on my Instagram, why then does that not correlate? The numbers don't correlate as to our subscribers here. So what are you doing on my Instagram account? And having said that, I've lost 1,000 account followers because of everything I have been saying and sharing on my Instagram account. And at first it was a visible public platform in private and on a private account of me sharing and unpacking the trauma I have lived with and suppressed for over 50 years. And I had chosen to be in the public eye, and I talk about this on our show, What Was It Like?, where season 1 focuses on my career path from 18 till now. And so I start off talking about what happened in 1989. I chose a very public career path, not because I wanted to just have fame. No, fame is for the hustlers. Go for it, meritless fame beeps. Meritless fame whores. Go for it. Go get fame. Fame finds those who seek it, so go for it. I'm not looking for fame. I never have. What is nice for those of us who have talent or skill is acknowledgement of that talent and skill and recognition of it, preferably in financial ways, so that we can continue doing what we do and sharing what we do. I'm going to read out a list of names here. But let me just finish on saying, what was it like? So talking about, I chose a career path that was visible, but I didn't choose it for its visibility. I chose it for how it helped, how I expressed my skills, so radio, etc. And so I chose to then very visibly in the public eye unpack that invisibility cloak I put upon myself when I was 18 to not ever talk about trauma, because we didn't talk about trauma in those days. As I have said many times before, trauma to us old people, Gen X people especially, is a term. It's a word followed, prefixed by blunt and force, and usually associated with one of the CSI shows on television. We didn't know what that was until Gen Z said, we're not living with trauma anymore. And they have a lot of wonderful terms emotional regulation and red flags that really, I can use that term to describe how I'm feeling. I want to talk about this. I had asked Dwayne to just bring up a list of famous people who faced rejection. Because every day we face this when we look at the numbers that we are forced to look at because we've got to. Because everyone can see our numbers. I feel that people should not have to see numbers. Or if that's the way it's got to be, then everybody be transparent, please. Every single corporation, business, organization, show your numbers. Governments, show your numbers. Show exactly what you've got, how many people, how much money. Everyone, bring it all out. Bring it all out on the table, because if we are forced to show our numbers and we have no choice, everyone here can see how many people view whatever. Yeah. And so therefore that herd mentality, people go, oh, no one's watching it. I'm not going to watch this. It must be boring. That's right. Yeah. So the assumption is it's not good. I assure you, nothing could be further from the truth. So famous people who faced rejection. Jerry Seinfeld, Harrison Ford, Albert Einstein, Colonel Sanders, Lady Gaga, Steve Jobs, Stephen King, Thomas Edison. If Thomas Edison faced rejection and he continued facing, rejection, and he believed what other people were saying, where would we be now? Well, maybe we would have had light just from that great big natural source in the sky. Remember Huberman, remember this. Sylvester Stallone, Anna Wintour, Nuclear Winter they call her, Elvis Presley, Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, Walt Disney, Vincent van Gogh, the Beatles, Jim Carrey, Sidney Poitier. Yeah, anyone who's black here, like Sidney Poitier and Oprah Winfrey, yeah, sure, I get it. Michael Jordan. What? All these people. And Fred Astaire, I remember this. You know, Fred Astaire was told he can't act, can't sing, can dance a little.
Wow.
And let me tell you this about the famous pairing of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Ginger did everything Fred did, but in heels and backwards. So, bye Fred. Ginger is your new role model, because this is what we're all doing. We are dancing backwards on heels. So I don't listen to what people say in that regard. I also don't listen to people who have never actually broken out of their comfort zones or their own fears and chosen to not pursue their dreams, etc. I am smug about that. I shouldn't be. I'm not being smug. It has been a very difficult choice you and I made to actually pursue our skills. Being brown people, being people from a small country like Fiji, we had all the obstacles, everything against us, but we took our opportunities that we got from our various privileges and we ran with it. I'm not saying na 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 na. I'm not saying that. I'm telling you just how we have always viewed the world and how we continue to view the world. I'm not going to let people's negativity and, oh, you should conform and fit the comfort zone and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to allow that. I have a 35-year resume to say that when I set out to do something, I accomplish. As do you. I have been given more opportunity to accomplish on a grander scale, but now you and I are combining and we are a partnership. But wow, numbers, 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 and all of this for what? For what end? Profits. As I said, we need to enter a no-profit era, and people need to now stop running away from themselves. The only way the world is going to change is if people stop running away from themselves and are able to confront themselves, and that is needed. But people don't. Instead, we all wallow in our misery. So we acknowledge that we have trauma, and that seems to be it. And then, oh, they go to therapy. Oh, they go get medicine. Again, pro-medicine, and if antidepressants works for you, go for it. I am not condemning that. I made a personal choice with the consent of medical professionals, with my doctor's consent, and her approval. She's a mental health specialist, and the second doctor that I now go to, with his approval, who is also a mental health specialist, saying I choose not to be on antidepressants because I wanted to face everything that was in my head that was drowning out the truth. I needed to face it with a naked mind so I could heal it properly, because what we are doing otherwise is masking ourselves. And people do also have avoidance by choosing to be activists for other people and other issues. The world is not going to change. The world is not going to change until we as individuals face ourselves and recognize that we all need individual change. Change yourself first, and then advocate. But no, people choose to advocate in the vain hope that that is going to change them. No, it's not. No, it's not. I can attest to that. I spent a lifetime advocating for everybody else, advocating for women, against domestic violence, against the sexual violence that women have, and I have personal experience with all of that. But I didn't tell anyone until I told everybody very publicly, because why should we be ashamed about what gets done to us by other people's trauma, about their lack of accountability, about how the ego, when it is faced with trauma, how it actually punishes and externalizes. That is what is happening to the world. That is what colonization is. Colonization is done by people who do not have identity and need to seek identity by conquest, by suppressing other people, because it gives people power. It makes them feel powerful to suppress others. Whoa, what is that? What is that? A metaphorical boot on other people's backs to keep them down, makes other people feel powerful. That's not power. You know what power is? Power is the power to not wield power. Power is having power and not wielding it to suppress or manipulate or exploit others. Power is responsibility. Power is not for the people who have it now. Power is innate. I mean, we can go back to what Time magazine, that dinosaur of patriarchy. Patriarchy itself is a dinosaur that is governing the world. All the structures are of it. Why? Because they were not content with the lack of power they had. They used the brawn side of humanity to say, well, we're stronger physically, so therefore we must be more powerful. Physically, sure. Whew. Look, I don't know. But anyway, we're looking for subscribers and we're looking for patrons and sponsors and advertisers, because aren't you tired of the lies and the manipulation and the exploitation of your trauma? Aren't you tired of that? And people are angry about the fact that I'm so, I get told, no, you should be more gentle. You should be more, don't be so aggressive. I'm not being aggressive. I am being assertive. And if that hurts your ears, then I think that perhaps you should also ask yourself, why are you being triggered? Don't blame me for triggering you. We all do that. I have blamed my husband. You've triggered me. And it's ridiculous, because when it's done to me, I laugh like, oh, okay. All I asked was a question. Oh, actually, I didn't even ask anything. I just said something and it's triggered you? Okay. So I recognize the hypocrisy. People don't trigger you. People get triggered. And so you do then. It's a wonderful opportunity to ask yourself, what do I need to heal from? What is hurting me, that is triggering me, that I need to heal? I don't listen to rejection. I don't. Because although I have been caught up in it, because we all get caught up in the numbers, so there's a slight, we get deflated, we get disappointed. And I have every day think, no, don't listen to numbers, because people will always want to do that to you. People will always want to cut everything down. People who don't have power will always want to cut others down. It's a form of, it's a defense mechanism as well. So if you're feeling particularly down, you can recognize this in yourself. You want to lash out at something and you want to critique something and this is terrible or whatever. We do this. People without power especially don't step back and go, oof. And really, every single one of us, we are human after all. We are meant to be. We were made, we were evolved to learn from our own mistakes. What has happened? It is from our mistakes we learned how to create this world we are currently in. It is from not knowing that great big source of energy and the original God, that is God, the sun, that star, the head of our solar system.
If anything, that is.
We learned, our brains learned very quickly that, once we stood up and shed the fur that we were before, when we had no melanin in our bodies, because if you look at the underbelly of an animal, there's no melanin. Human beings are unique in that when we stood up finally and we're humanoids in whatever form, Homo erectus or whatever it was, Neanderthal at that time, the sun burnt us and our brains quickly went, activate melanin, the melanocytes or whatever the cells are that are called. And also that is why then humanoids turn to getting furs, wearing furs, etc. Don't do that anymore, please. We were there. It was fur. That's another issue altogether, which I will talk about on Stylander, maybe in episodes coming up. Stylander episode 2 dropped yesterday, as did the Riff episode 2. In Stylander, I talked about 5 vintage pieces, because this is also Fashion Revolution Week, which was started in direct correlation because of the tragedy that happened on April 24th, 2013. The Rana Plaza collapse, that disaster that showed the world that there are people making your clothes in abysmal conditions. So I talk a little bit about that on Stylanders, episode number 2. But now, thank you very much for being here. It is time for the most important part of the show, the Daily Egg. Ta-da! Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you this afternoon for Sitara at 5 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time. If not, we'll see you tomorrow on the Daily Egg. Thank you. Bye. And confront yourself. Really. Do it. It's very liberating. Bye.